Join them by Norm from NUFC True Faith podcast. Norm, how's it going to begin with?
Very good, mate. It looks like we've just signed Isaac from Real Sociedad for a vast amount of cash, and that is a pleasing piece of news to be coming on this podcast within sort of 20 minutes of the deal potentially being announced. Brilliant.
Let's have a look at him. I mean, do you know much about him, and do you think he'll be playing at the weekend?
All I know of him really is what I saw him do for Sweden in the Euros. I thought he was excellent for them. You look at his goals record at Sociedad, it's more or less 1-3, which I don't think is bad for, Sociedad are a good side. They've been decent for the last few seasons. They've got obviously former Newcastle midfielder Mikel Merino there, who's an excellent player as well. One who, unfortunately, it didn't quite work out for him at Newcastle. I would love to have seen him stay, but ultimately, a team like Sociedad, 1-3 in La Liga, I think that's a pretty good record. The fact that he's also 22 as well means that he's still developing. How I think is the kind of manager who can bring players on who will improve him. So the little I do know about him, it greatly excites me, and I think he'll only get better at Newcastle. And will he play at the weekend if the signing happens? I mean, he may well be in the squad. I don't think he'll start because it'll be Callum Wilson, who at the moment is, he's sensational, Callum Wilson. So I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him in the squad. I'd love to see him on the bench against you on Sunday and coming off the bench. It would be fantastic. But right now, look, he hasn't signed, so I'm just going to touch wood and hope that it goes through.
So, big transfer window so far, big money being spent. Sven Botman, one of the players that I think Wolves were linked with probably 18 months ago, pushing £35 million, I think, in the end for him, was it? Or around that sort of thing. We never really know, do we? Nick Pope, Matt Targett as well. I take it they've improved the side.
Hugely. Martin Dubravka will always have a place in Newcastle fans' hearts. He's been a vital part of a squad that was battling relegation for many years. A very, very good servant. He cost like $3.5 million or something from Slavia Prague, I think it was, or maybe Sparta Prague, one of the big Czech teams. But he was limited as a goalkeeper in the sense that he's very good for a team down, I think, at that end of the table. Nick Pope comes in and already you can see the difference. It's huge. Just the fact that Pope doesn't really make many saves because he commands that area. He commands the whole box. He anticipates the ball coming early. He's very good at releasing the ball early. He's great at throwing it out, which is what Howe wants because we kind of play this pressing football now. And even when it does come to having to make those outstanding saves, I've never seen a keeper so effective with his legs making saves. He's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, really delighted. And for 10 million, an absolute bargain. Matt Targett was fundamental to Newcastle climbing up the table last season. He's the best left back I've seen at the club in years. I think you probably have to go back to Jose Enrique, who was good, but I still don't think as good as what Targett was last season. So brilliant signing. And I think Villa, you've already got Villa fans on social media wondering why they've spent, I think, almost 30 million on Digne and got rid of Targett for 15, which I'm sure you'll find funny as a Wolves fan. Obviously, Villa make them mess up. Happy days. We're happy about that as well, obviously. Botman, a player who I didn't know much about until we were rumoured to be signing him, and I spoke to a couple of French journalists covering football over there, and to all intents and purposes, he is a sensational prospect, and he's looked solid so far. We conceded 3 goals against Man City, but hey, that's not really, I don't think, it's sort of, a barometer for measuring how good your defence is necessarily. Botman was excellent when he made his debut against Brighton, coming to the centre, the push down, burn out the left because Matt Targett was out with a supposed dead leg, but that's 2 games now. So another potentially excellent signing. If you add on Bruno Guimaraes to that as well, who's been brilliant since he came in. Kieran Trippier, obviously a great free kick on Sunday against Man City, but just in terms of what he's done to that squad and in terms of setting the levels, right? You've got players who've been there for years who maybe were kind of settled where they were, and all of a sudden Kieran Trippier comes in, automatically you're going to have to jump up a couple of levels just to show that you're not an embarrassment next to someone as good as him, basically. So all in all, our recruitment has been absolutely sensational. And one other thing I will say, other than the fact that Eddie Howe has improved players remarkably, Fabian Schär being a great example, but the biggest example of it is Joelinton, who has just been absolutely sensational for nigh on half a season now. If you take in 17 games last season, a couple of games this season, he's been a cliche, mate. But Joelinton has been a new signing. He's been a new signing, and he's been absolutely superb.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. For World Cup year, we've got Qatar World Cup in a couple of months' time. Callum Wilson, I think, has always been a thorn in Wolves' side. I can remember when he was at Coventry with Leon Clark, and we were in for a striker, and we picked the bloody wrong one. We picked Leon Clark, and obviously Callum Wilson has, gone to heights that Leon Clark would never manage, and has never. Do you think he will stay fit, and do you think he should be on the plane?
First question, he's got a better chance of staying fit now that he's at a football club that is run professionally and has a management team in place that isn't stuck in 2000, 2001. And obviously, the facilities at Newcastle have already improved. There's work underway, but it's ongoing, but things are just way, way better. So in terms of his conditioning, he's going to get it. Whereas I don't think under the previous regime he got that at all. It was a case of, all right, you can run, you're on the pitch, or you're injured again. Okay, we'll bring you back in as soon as you feel better. That's not how it is now at Newcastle United. So he's got a much better chance. Look, historically, he has suffered from injuries. He was played under Howard Bournemouth, and he had a big injury there. He's had niggles prior to that as well. So there's always a question mark. But right now, he looks fit, and he's talking fit. He's talking as if he's in the best shape he has been in his life. And you look at his performance on the pitch, he's been sensational. And what you're also seeing is how being clever. He's taking him off with 10, 15 minutes to go. Job done, get him off. Completely and utterly on board with that. And obviously, Isaac coming in makes a huge difference as well, because it means that this intense pressure on him to be on the pitch for the whole 90 minutes just isn't there. And in terms of his ability, I've said this before, and again, it's very easy for me to, move into bias. I'm going to be a bit subjective probably, but in terms of English number 9s, I don't think there is anyone other than Kane better than him. It's as simple as that. So why not have him in the World Cup squad? Because if Kane gets injured, who are you going to replace him with? You're going to be replacing him basically with a wide man in a central role. Or if you need Kane to come off, you need Wilson to come on and change the game. He's ideal. I'm 100% behind the fact that he's England's second number 9 and he ought to be in that World Cup squad. I'm glad to see you agree. I'm very glad.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, England are lacking strikers for me. Last time you were on the podcast, Norm, I think probably gave you a little bit of a hard time about the owners and the situation there, because the takeover had just gone through. And I think you said that you'd had sort of friends that said that they didn't want to go anymore, or you knew of people that said, "Oh, that's too far for me." Has that changed for any of those people? Has it sort of died down a little bit? Was it more of it? It was the front page, the back page news making the front pages sort of thing previously. Has it died down?
I don't think it's died down. I think it's a case of peaks and troughs. So, for example, relatively quiet pre-season, which is usually the case, but then season starts again, and it's brought up before either the first game against Nottingham Forest, the Saudi money, and then you look at the Man City game. I think Jonathan Wilson, who, let's be fair, has a beanie's bonnet about Newcastle anyways. He's a Sunderland fan. He worked for a Sunderland fanzine for years. I mean, that's not me saying he's not objective in his journalism, but it is. He called it the sports washing derby. He spoke about, the game being great, but he went through the human rights angle. He's done this repeatedly. Look, I'm not criticising that, because he's a journalist, and ultimately the Saudi regime is a regime that ought to be taken to task by journalists, right? But at the same time, this, I suppose, it's kind of ongoing. It's like almost every time Newcastle are going to do something now, like win a game, playing a good game of football, sign a player like Isaac, this is going to be brought up. That's just how it's going to be forever. So as I say, it'll be peaks and troughs. It'll be moments. And look, also you have to factor in that a week before the game against Man City, or during the week before, the news came out that a woman had been sentenced to 34 years in prison in Saudi Arabia for putting out some tweets that were anti-regime. So this is just what it's going to be like. We are owned by the Saudi Arabian government, and the Saudi Arabian government do pretty abhorrent things. And fans that I know, it's the same as it was before. There's this constant conflict. I have this constant conflict all the time, but ultimately, I think what I've done is I've reflected quite a lot, to be honest, and it's made me realise to a certain extent that I'm probably not the person I thought I was. Because if you'd asked me 2 years ago, when we were terrible under Mike Ashley, if a regime such as the Saudis takes over Newcastle, would you leave? I probably would have said yes, and now it's happening, I haven't. So it kind of reflects on me, and it's quite upsetting, to be honest with you, to reflect like this.
It really runs that deep for you?
It does, mate. And this isn't, obviously, I can only speak for myself. Yeah, right. Some people don't engage with it. Some people don't care. Some people do care on different levels. But for me, it does run deep, yes. part of me would like to have the courage to say, you know what, actually, I'm uncomfortable with this and walk away, but I can't, because I love that football club, what it represents to me, and I love my fellow football fans, my Newcastle friends, that the whole part of the identity that the football club is, you know, it's in the fabric of your being, and it's very difficult to just scrub it away, especially, and this is going to sound horrific, but when what is happening in Saudi Arabia, it's not visual to us here in this country. It isn't. You know, we know it goes on. We read about it. We hear about it, but we don't see it. And you can morally disengage, which sounds repulsive, but that is the reality is that is what it is, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm morally disengaging from what I consider to be my fixed political views and outlook on life. So that was
really interesting, isn't it? No, I think it's really, really interesting that it would run that deep for you, because I don't know how I would feel either. You know, we're Chinese owned. You never know what's going to happen in the future, and you know, we've mentioned the World Cup. I've mentioned the World Cup already, and that's in Qatar. Not the best human rights record, and especially when this tournament is taken into consideration as well. But I want to go and win the World Cup, so maybe that does say more about me than anyone else. So it's a really interesting way of looking at it, and thank you for sharing that and just explaining the situation, because you don't need to do that. But I thought I'd ask anyway, in the hope that you would, Norman. You didn't disappoint. Let's have a look.
Because I like you.
We'll take that. Let's have a look ahead to the weekend. There's potentially going to be lots of new signings on show. This season seems to be one where players have been thrown straight in. Nunes for Wolves, I think, signed halfway through the week before the Tottenham game and played his part in that game as well. So we could see lots of new signings for this game. How do you think it's going to go? Where do you think the key battleground is?
I look at you at the moment, and I like your manager. I've mentioned on a few podcasts I've done with you. I like Wolves as a club. I like the players that you've got, but you clearly struggle to score goals. And defensively, we are absolutely superb at the moment. As I say, Man City, you can kind of remove that because they're just ridiculous. And we scored 3 against them, which is, you know, in itself phenomenal. Okay. So I think the key is that if we don't concede, we will win. So I don't want to see you take the lead. I do feel that if you take the lead, you then become very difficult to break down. You proved that last season on numerous occasions, right? There was lots of those games with fine margins. You would take a lead and you just wouldn't let it go. So key battles in terms of players on the pitch. Look, Maxi was back to his best against Man City. The thing with Maxi is obviously what you tend to see is one brilliant game is usually followed by a slightly quieter game. So I don't know if he'll be the key battle. Now you're playing 4 at the back. You might be able to manage that better rather than when you're playing 3 at the back and you've got wing backs and he has that space to get in behind. But the key battle, mate, it's midfield. It's centre of midfield. It's Neves and Nunez, a new signing, up against Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes. Willock, you can kind of discount him because he's more of a kind of floating presence in that midfield. It's those two. It's that what I call the double pivot of Joelinton and Guimaraes up against Neves and Nunez. That is going to be absolutely key. And I think there's going to be a lot of big tackles, a lot of brilliant passes. And it's just a question of who can keep you there, which pair can keep you there, pair quiet. That's the key battle on me, mate.
I think it's got box office written all over it. Terrible. And I hope it is. I hope it's
all Portuguese speakers as well. So hopefully there'll be quite a lot of insults.
That's true. Yeah. They'll all be pally, won't they? Swapping shirts at halftime. Let's do score prediction, Norm.
Right. I mentioned the tightness of the game because of respective defences and potentially your inability to score. I'm going to say 1-0 Newcastle.
1-0 Newcastle. Right, okay, we'll see what happens. Best of bad luck, of course, for the weekend. It's a bank holiday, so it can't be completely ruined by the football that either our teams play. But otherwise, we'll catch up with you back end of the season.
Cheers, Sam. All the best to you and all the other lads and Wolves fans for the rest of the season.